Hello, I'm really glad you're joining me today for this drawing session because today I'm going to do a follow along charcoal drawing and pastel as well of a cup. So I will go step by step, first sketch it out with pencil and then go in and use charcoals and white pastel as well. So we're going to do black and white on gray paper. Please make sure that you watch my charcoal tutorial as well, where I discuss all the materials that are best to use or not to use when you're using charcoal, and I will leave the link in the description box. One thing that I need to warn you about, and that is when you are working with charcoal, it's really hard to erase it from the paper. So the best way to do things is either to go straight in with shadows and lights and things like that, or if you want to be a little bit precise and you need to measure things out a little bit before you start shading, is to use a really light hand and use a graphite pencil instead, because that's a little bit more precise and it's easier to erase. And this is what I'm going to do today as well, because I also want to show you how to structure through ellipses and create the right shape for the cup itself. So as you can see on the picture, it's a cup with a saucer. So to start, as always, we start with a really simple shape, an overall sort of a shape. So I've got this like half a oval kind of a thing. And then we've got a little saucer. Okay, and we will correct, like I can already see that this side is way bigger than this one. We will be correcting them once we get a central line going. So now that we've sketched the overall shape or the placement of what we want to draw on there, let's go for the central line. So that's step 2. Again, if you would like to see how, all the proper structure with explanation specifically for cylindrical objects, I do have a tutorial for that as well, and I will link it in the description box. So please make sure to watch this if you haven't seen it so far. Okay, so I'm going to put the central line through there. I really do hope it's visible because it's really soft. It's a really soft gray on the gray paper. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to measure out if that's equal, and then I think it goes down about there. So let's see it around this level. Yep, that's pretty equal as well. And on the bottom, sort of it goes a little bit like this there. So it's about there. Okay, so I'm just measuring one side against the other so that it looks really balanced and not wonky or pulling over to one side or the other. So next thing for us, I'll still have to measure this one as well. Because this one is definitely off, I can tell. Yeah. So it's a bit shorter. We need to shorten it up on that side. Okay, but we'll get to ellipses a bit later. Okay, so next is for us to put the central lines for our ellipses. So I've got one here, and I've got one here, and then this whole thing, that's another ellipse. So we'll put central line, horizontal central line as the next step. I'm going to start working on the ellipses. So if this is the middle, so I'll just go maybe about there. And approximately sketch this out. I'll get rid of the lines that I don't need, that are just getting in the way. As soon as there's something that you've structured but it's just getting in the way of you seeing your object, you need to get rid of them. Okay, now the next ellipse is going to be quite a bit wider, but you can't really see it because it's sitting in the plate. So I think we need to lift it up a bit. So I'm going to do a central line for it somewhere there. And build it up like that. Now I've got that done. And going over this, whenever you've got an object blocking something, I always suggest to draw this as if this object is transparent, because then you can just erase this, but it'll be so much easier to see if this side meets this one in the right spot. And this is of course the biggest ellipse. Just because it's the source. And now there is also a little bit of the bottom that's visible, just tiny little bit. It's almost not there, but we'll have to put that in. Now we've got this side sorted. Now let's have a look at the overall shape. So for that, I'm going to erase the lines that I don't need. Get rid of this. And now we can compare and just have a look and say, are we happy with this, or is there something off? Okay. Let's see. I can see just a little bit over here, just tiny bit on the shape, and to even it out over there, tidy up the ellipse of it. And also this cup has a bit of coffee in it. I'm not going to do a separate ellipse for it because it is so close to this one, but if it was further down, then we'd have to do the central line for it and do it all the way through. So at the moment I'm just drawing it according to this line, you know, the ellipse that is created by the edge of the cup. Now let's structure a handle. What do? We need to look at the picture and examine it a little bit and just see how far does the handle move away from the cup. Is it as far as the saucer? Is it halfway? So it's not according to my measurements, and I will do in the future a video about how to measure things. Say if you have a still F in front of you, or with the picture, you can always just do the same thing here if you want to. But I'm just doing it by eye, so it's just a little bit shorter than this. So if I create this line that goes up from the saucer, then it'll be not quite there, just tiny bit moved towards the cup itself. Now let's have a look at where the handle starts, and it starts just maybe there. So I'm going to make another line that goes out this way. And where does the handle finish, or the bottom part where it joins to the cup? And it's somewhere there, I think. So we can do another line like this. So now we've got this square going on, and now all I need to do is to fit the handle within these lines. I'm curving it out like that. This is the widest part here, and then it goes in to this line. It goes in quite smooth. It doesn't sort of, sometimes handles sort of go like that, like a number 2. This one goes quite straight. And now let's give this handle a thickness as well. So it sort of joins there. You get that little bulge, and then all the way there. So now we've got the shape as well. Let's remove these structure lines and see if we did do it in the right position, or perhaps we need to change something. Yeah, I think it's there. Maybe just this part here, just the shape. Yeah, next step, because we're not going to use graphite to shade it, because charcoal sometimes can get a little bit tricky with applying it over the pencil, especially if you've got quite a bit of pencil and it's quite dark graphite. If you try to apply charcoal over it, it might not go on top of it really well. So the best thing before we start doing any kind of charcoal application is to soften the lines of the pencil a little bit. So I'll do that by just really gently going over it. Again, if there are lines you really don't need, structure lines, just remove them completely. These lines, just soften them. We don't need this bit. Okay, so now we've got this lovely sketch, and we can start using our charcoals. Now, if we look at the picture very carefully, you to evaluate different shades, what is dark and what is light. Because it's so hard to remove charcoal, you don't really want to go very heavy-handed. Because we already have gray as our mid-tone, so always remember, whenever you're working on white paper, it means that you already have all the highlights there. All you need to do is apply shadows. When you're working on black paper, you need to realize that all the shadows are there for you, so you kind of have to do that reversal thing in your brain and start applying only areas that are highlights, sort of a mid-lights, or really light shadows. When we've got gray paper, we've got all the mid-tones there already provided. They are built into the paper. What we need to do now is apply shadows and apply really strong highlights. So if I have a look at the composition, then I will be able to see that the darkest part in the composition is probably this bit with coffee, right? Especially that part where the shadow is. So would I start with that? I could start with it. Yeah, I could also start with some sort of a softer shadows. So with this composition, you know how in the previous draw along sketches we did, we worked with the really dark sort of area first. Here I guess you could also work with a really light area first as well, but just to keep up with the things that we did before, I will start with a darker area first. So just move this a bit closer. Now I'm using a charcoal pencil. I think it's a medium. Again, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, please watch the other tutorial, the one that covers all the charcoal materials. And you see in the area there where the coffee is catching some reflection, I'm actually not going to go over with charcoal, but I'm going to drag some of the charcoal from surrounding areas onto that area there, and same here. Also, using too much charcoal, especially when you don't need to, can create a lot of transfer. Another thing that you, unless you're working really messy and it's really sort of a chaotic style, then you want to watch out for that too. So now I'm going to apply again. So because it is quite hard to remove from your drawing, I am working in layers, so darkening it if I feel that I need to. Now this is quite a tidy way of drawing, and one of the other drawings I will show you a messier way as well to work with it. It can be a lot of fun. Okay, so I'll leave that for now. And remember, we can always go back and correct things. Now I'm going to move on to some other shadows that I think are just a bit darker than the grayness of this gray paper. So you see, I'm not even using any charcoal here. I'm just pretty much reapplying it from there onto this area. Perhaps later on we'd need to darken this, but I don't want to go too dark before we start to apply the highlights, because that would be a real game changer. And once you've applied charcoal, as you know, it is really hard to remove. So a bit more shadow. Just a little bit more in here, but really softly, because the shadow is really light, just because the cup is nice and white as well. I'm also going to use a little bit of that darkness there to create a bit of a contrast in the thickness of the cup. So whenever you're working on objects like this, always remember that it doesn't only have sides, it also has thickness. So it's a really big mistake when people forget about it and don't show that. That really adds a lot of substance to the objects that you are drawing. Okay, and just a little bit here on the bottom as well. Remember that little bit that we've added that is visible just under the saucer. Again, I might have to do it a bit darker, but not just yet. I'll leave that for a little bit. Still using coffee charcoal reserves for shading my other bits and pieces. So then there's a shadow that's just there on that side of the cup. And because that cup is quite shiny, you can see that it's sort of, yeah, there's a lot of reflections from the outside objects, lights, and so on, and they show up as lines and things. Thank you for watching part 1 of this video. Make sure to subscribe and press the notification bell to get notified for my next part 2 video. And as always, thank you very much for drawing with me.